Welcome in, friends. Thank you for joining me for another week and another message. So this week we're going to talk about a message that Pastor Donaldson preached called Keep Pressing. And so it's not as wordy or we're not walking through the scriptures like we did the last couple of weeks, but I think it is equally as important. So he started the message talking about chess. Now, if you're like me, I have nothing about chess. Barely know about checkers, if you want to be honest. But he talked about one of the pieces on the chessboard. And so I had to do a little research myself further into it so I can share it with you. So he talked about the pawn. The pawn is going to be the smallest piece on the board. It's going to be the slowest. It's worth the least. It's 1 point compared to like the queen, who's 8 or 9 points. And I'm sorry for all the chess experts out there if I got the points wrong on the queen. But the pawn is often sacrificed on the board, one of the first ones to get used, right? But he talked about that pawn with endurance. If it makes it across the board, it can become the most powerful piece on the board. So the pawn cannot jump, it can't move diagonally. If another piece is in front of it, it is blocked, right? But if it keeps moving one square, and makes it all the way across, it has the ability to be transformed into whatever piece that the player wants. And of course, you would want to transform into the most powerful piece, which is the queen. So let's keep that. So the scripture reference today is going to be Philippians 3:13 through 14. So let's read. Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do. Forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forth unto those things which are before. I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. Now, this is Paul speaking. He's in prison, right? He's not on the mountaintop. He's not in a wonderful place. He's in prison. And so in the beginning of Philippians 3, he's talking about all his accolades, right? He is of this lineage. He has done that. He's done this and that. And he says that he counts it for nothing, right? Count all these things but loss for the excellency and knowledge of Christ. So all the things that he's done in his life, right? All the things that he is, right? He comes from the right bloodline, has the right parents and all those kind of things, but counts it for loss, right? As he presses towards the mark. So the point of this message is about enduring, right? The name of it is to keep pressing. So how do we endure? Let's look a little bit deeper and see verse by verse what Paul is telling us to do. So the first thing he talks about, he says, but this one thing I do. And so Pastor kind of talked to us about focusing, on one thing. And sometimes that's very hard for us to do. Right now in this social media age, right, it is easy to be overstimulated. We're looking at the news, we're looking at things on social media, we have work, we have home, we have the gym. You know, the world is telling us you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. We are stretched and pulled in all these different areas. But Paul is telling us that we need to focus on this one thing. And so when your mind is everywhere, it's hard to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish because we're so distracted. So I would encourage you to focus on the one thing. What is the important thing? And if you've been with me for the last couple of weeks when we talked about Mary and Martha, right? There was one thing that was necessary. So the emphasis through the word is to focus on one thing, the thing that is most important. Because I believe that the enemy uses that as a tactic to distract us, right? So we're here, we're there, we're everywhere, and we get our eyes off of the prize. We forget to focus on that one thing. So next, Paul says, forgetting those things which are behind. And this is an important thing. So we don't want to let previous experiences control us, to dictate our future. So Pastor talked about wounds versus weight. And so a wound is something that happened to you, right? But the weight is how you respond. The weight of it is the baggage that comes from that wound or from that trauma, right? And so it's okay. Things happen to us. We have traumas, we have things that affect us, but we can't let it weigh us down when we're moving forward, right? Like that pawn, because what we are We're pawns on God's chessboard, right? So we're moving, we're going, we're pressing through life, but that weight is dragging us down. That weight is slowing our progress. And so we have to let those things go, forgetting the things that are behind. So it's okay, something happened to you, but don't let it dictate and determine your future. And so Pastor encouraged us to take dominion over that thing, right? So dominion is like to have power over. And so he talked about minions, right? So like the movie Minions, right? So they are like servants. But when you take dominion, it is to serve or to lord over. And so we don't want the past trauma to lord over us. We want to lord over it, right? We want it to be submitted to us, to use it as a stepping stone, right? Not for it to weigh us down. And so sometimes we always think about, when we say forget those things behind, we always think about all the bad things that happen or the failures or rejections. But sometimes you have to forget all the good things too, the tragedies and the triumphs. Because sometimes when we get focused on maybe something really big happened to you 15 years ago, and that's all you can see. Oh, I was a part of this team and it was great. Or I was a part of this big game, that was my defining moment. And we tend to get stuck, right? And so it was so good back in the 80s or 90s, but what year are we in now, right? 2026, we're moving forward. And so sometimes even the triumphs can hold us back. So sometimes we have to forget those things. Okay, that was great, the Lord did that, but God is always moving us forward into a new thing. So don't get stuck in the past, right? For good or for bad, but don't get stuck in the past. So an example of that we talked about was the children of Israel. So in Genesis, if you're a Bible reader or if you're not, God had delivered the children of Israel from under the hand of the Pharaoh, right? They were oppressed. God freed them, bringing them through the wilderness to the promised land. And anytime something went wrong, they said, it was better in Egypt. It was better when we had this. It was better during this time. You know, at least we had food, or at least they had graves in Israel, and all those things. They were constantly looking back. Anytime they had a setback, they say, take me back to where I was. And so we have to be cautious that we don't do those things. Anytime something happens or doesn't go the way that we think it should, we have a minor setback. Oh no, nothing will ever be like, how it was in the 90s when I was growing up. Those were the best times. Well, the best is yet to come. We have to remind ourselves that our best isn't in our past. Our best is in our future. So Paul also tells us to reach forward to the things that are before. And so reaching forward, not just a reach forward, but consider it like a runner, like we're straining forward, we're pressing forward, we're moving physically forward, right? And so one thing that Pastor said that really stuck with me is that orientation determines your destination. So if we're constantly looking back and we're not reaching forward, right? Can you look behind you and walk forward successfully? So a lot of times we're trying to move forward, but we're stuck in the past. We're still looking at those things behind. We're not pressing forward. And so we're not progressing forward. So don't stop before you reach your harvest. That's an important part, because a lot of times we're going through and we don't think it's happening fast enough. We don't see the progress, but remember that pawn, square by square. And it's okay, you might not be able to jump 5 squares or to move diagonally, and it may be looking like another piece on the chessboard is having more action than you or getting further than you. But what we're supposed to do is forget those things behind, and we're supposed to endure, right? Move forward step by step. So let's look at Galatians 6 and 9. So Galatians 6 and 9 says, let us not be weary in well-doing. For in due season, we shall reap if we faint not. And I don't know about you, this time, these last few weeks, even this year, 2026, right, has been a little bit of struggle. Especially for me, I'll be candid with you, because we're friends, right? So at the beginning of the year, I feel like I wanted to say everything that could go wrong, all went wrong at one time, right? My dryer broke, oven broke, garage broke, everything was going wrong. And so sometimes we're like, Lord, I'm trying to faithfully serve you. I'm trying to faithfully move forward. I'm doing all the things that you ask, but this is going wrong and this is going wrong and that's going wrong. And it is easy to get weary in well-doing, to say, just forget it. It looks like they're prospering and they're doing whatever they want to, and I'm trying to follow you, and my whole world is falling apart. But one square at a time. Keep pressing. Don't get weary. You're not alone. So I talked to someone the other day, one of my friends, and she just said she feels so alone. And I said, you're not alone. And she says, well, I feel it. And I said, what you feel is lonely, but you're not alone. And sometimes following Christ is a lonely road. But he said he would never leave you or forsake you, that he's with you always, even unto the ends of the earth. And so that's the enemy wanting you to feel like you're alone. That you may be in a lonely place, but know that over here, there's another pawn, myself, moving square by square, just like you are. So we're in this together, right? So don't get weary. Don't get weary in well-doing. And we don't want to stop before the harvest, because who's to say when we make it to the board? So I don't know about you. I can't see God's chessboard. So I don't know how far along I am. And so it tells us not to faint. So when Pastor talked about fainting, so not just a complete pass out, but think about the runner again, right? We talked about straining and moving forward, right? Stretching our muscles, stretching forward. And the thing he said is that if you're comfortable, you're not stretching, right? So think about when you're stretching after a workout or before a workout, you feel the stretch, the pull, the burn of your muscles, and it's not always a comfortable feeling at that time, right? As we are making muscles and the resistance come, those resistance things that God sends in our path to make us strong, right? If you're at the gym, you're not gonna get strong with tiny little weights, right? We've got to have big weights that come. So sometimes the opposition is big so that we can exercise our muscles, so we can strain forward and grow, right? So he talked about that runner. Think about the runner making it almost to the finish line. And you've seen videos, and I have, or you might have been at a race and seen it, where almost at the finish line, the runner's body can take no more, right? It just collapses, or they look like they're dehydrated and they're straining, they're moving forward, and they have to crawl and fight their way to the finish line, right? So it says, don't get weary in well-doing. Faint not, right? Don't let your body shut down. Don't let your spirit shut down. Keep pressing. We're almost to the finish line. So an example he talked about is the story of Joseph. And I really do like this story, that Joseph endured for 13 years. So I'm not going to tell you the whole thing. I'm just going to give you a short little rundown. We're not going to read through it. But Joseph had brothers that pretty much were hating on him, if you want to be honest, right? And so they plotted against him. They sold him into slavery. He ended up at Potiphar's house. But what Joseph did is he kept pressing forward. In every area that he was in, he excelled because he kept his focus on his godly character, right? He kept his focus on God. So even in Potiphar's house, he got elevated, and Potiphar prospered. Potiphar prospered, right, with Joseph there. But then there was a situation with Potiphar's wife, and Joseph was thrown into prison. But even in the prison, he was almost under the head guard, right? He prospered there, but still stuck, right? Who wants to be in prison? Yeah, I prospered, but I'm in prison. And so years passed and years passed. He had a dream for the baker and all these things, and he seemed to be forgotten, right? He endured for 13 years. But in an instant, right, Pharaoh had a dream. He was called from prison to interpret that dream. And in an instant, in one conversation, Joseph was promoted, right? So from prison, ex-con, now second in command under Pharaoh, given the signet ring. That was the sign of authority, right? That what he said was law. It was almost like the Pharaoh speaking, that he was put in charge over everything. But he endured for 13 long years. And so even when he had the opportunity to pay back his brothers for all the things that they had done to him, he didn't, because of the character that was in him. because he had endured, right? He had come out as pure gold, right? As we say, as we go through that refiner's fire and all those things that are not like God gets taken away, he had come out, he had endured, he had made it towards the mark. And we're like, well, what are we pressing for, right? The mark of the high calling, right? It's not a calling that you got to fight somebody else for. It's not a race like I got to beat this person to that. And sometimes we're used to competition where, I got to beat this person. But that's not what this is about. We're pressing towards the mark of the high calling that God has given us, the identity that we have to walk through in Him, right? So we're moving forward into the identity that He has given us. And sometimes there's things that we have to let go, right? The baggage, the weight from the traumas and the triumph. Sometimes there's obstacles that we're going to have to face, that resistance, so we can build our muscles. And we have to endure, faint not, stretch forward, square by square, until we get to the other side. So what do we want to learn about this pond, right? When it gets to the other side and it is transformed into the queen. The queen was already in the pond, but the requirement was to make it across the board. So whoever God has called you to be, whatever purpose that God has given you, whatever He's called you for is already inside of you. So the enemy would come and tell you that you're not enough, but you are. Everything that you need is already inside you. What's required is enduring to the end. So I would encourage you to keep moving forward towards your purpose, keep moving forward towards that new identity, keep moving forward to who God has called you to be, step by step. And you may say, I'm not moving the fastest. I'm not the loudest. I'm not this or that. But just keep moving. Just keep pressing, square by square. We'll get there. So I thank you so much for joining me this week, and I hope this message has encouraged you. It definitely encouraged me to keep pressing in this political climate and all the things that are going on in this, rat race, as they say. We're trying to do this, trying to do that, just trying to survive, right? But God is calling us to thrive. But how do we do that? We keep our eyes fixed on Him. We keep moving forward. We don't get weary in well-doing, right? So focus on the one thing, that one thing that's necessary. Focus on what God has called you to do. When you put Him first, He'll take care of the rest. Let's forget the things that's behind and reach forward, strain, move forward to the things that He's called you to. And like I said, don't faint. That harvest, the end of that chessboard may be closer than you think. So hang in there. As always, I love you and God loves you. He definitely has something great for you.